us. I must say a few things that we are now at a point, given all the momentum that's been generated in the country on FSM, right from when we were all together with the launch of the FSM policy back in February 2017, to now in 2020, we are probably hitting the 100 plus FSTPs operational milestone, even in a year like 2020, with all the issues, the sector has still progressed significantly, and thanks to all the members here and the larger alliance, which has kind of put their weight behind this momentum. Strong commitment from all the states, many of whom are represented here on the call, but we'll hit 100 plus milestone, which is a huge thing for us. And I think at least I feel very proud that we've reached this point. The first 500 are the ones which will set the base for the, if I'm getting Shubhagato's numbers right, to around 5,000 to a 7,000 number. So if we get those first 500 going well, operating well, and sustaining well enough, I don't think the vision that Shubhagato has laid out for 2030, all urban areas in the country getting covered through safe sanitation and fecal sludge management solutions, is very far off. So with that, what I'd like to say is that I think we've got a lot of policy level momentum, which you've all seen. We've got budget commitments behind infrastructure and service operations for FSM. I think it's time for us to also take a pause to see, now that we have these potential first movers in the FSTP FSM sector established, with starting from the Devanhalli FSTP to now newer FSTPs in Maharashtra, Odisha, UP, AP, Telangana, and also I think a few of them around Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, MP now, and Tamil Nadu, of course. So I hope I'm not missing out any state, but I think these are where we feel there is a safe space for us to learn from, so that the 100 and then the 500 can run well and operate well based on all the information that we have in this room and in your larger organizations. It's time for us to deepen our understanding of how these FSM solutions work. And as a start, and I'm sure all of the partners are doing things across different solutions, but what CPR has done is, like Shubhagato said, look at an in-depth analysis of 4 FSTPs in Odisha, understanding the operational and financial numbers and the costs, not just the cost, but also the operating procedures for these FSTPs. And Punita has done a very, very comprehensive analysis. Actually, it took me 2 big meetings to go through that, to understand that in depth. And I'm hoping that this masterclass will be a good opportunity for you to see what they've done, and maybe figure out how we can take this to different states as those FSTPs are coming up, to apply the Excel tools and models that they have created. I'm sure there's going to be a space for, say, 15-20% customization based on the context that you are operating in. But this tool is quite an exemplar that they have created based on the in-depth analysis that has been done. This masterclass is kind of a two-way street. I think what I'm seeing is Punita and the CPR team will talk about what they have done, what they have created, but also get feedback from you, whether these parameters and whether these assumptions that they have taken to hold true for the states that and the context that you're operating in. And you'll have to pour in the feedback into this tool to make it the most comprehensive one that's possible. The last thing is that we also have eGov Foundation, who have kindly agreed to support creating a FSM module or a tool which is going to be open source and available to all of us for us to use in the states and cities as well. And this Excel tool is one component of that FSM module that eGov will use to create a whole module or FSM that they layer on their Digit platform. And that's a huge thing, because that kind of opens up many areas of opportunities and gives cities the resources to sustain the operations of FSM solutions, which is the biggest thing that we have all been scared of and struggling with as well. And they have a short session planned today. And I think the feedback from you will actually pour into also the tool that they're creating under their larger Digit work. So with that, I'm just going to end, and I'm looking forward to this masterclass. I hope you can think of this as a safe space to really contribute to the public good that we're all creating together. And also, hopefully, we'll see a tool that can be implemented in many cities based on the work that CPR and hopefully eGov will do soon for us. With that, I'm handing it back to you, Shubhagato, to take us on.
Thanks so much, Sakshi. Um, I have the concept note was shared, but I thought that we'll run through it once the agenda is slightly modified, and one or two additional slides have come in as we've been preparing for this process. But it kind of spans two, 3 sessions. So I'll just run you quickly through it so that we are all on the same page. And then we'll do the round of introductions and discussions around where we are in our own states. As Sakshi said, there are these, as per the database that is maintained in the Government of India, KPMG, WashI maintain. This from the July database, this is what we have found, that 109 FSTPs are completed in 13 states, right? There are 193 under construction. There are, of course, 19 states that have policies in place. And that, we are aiming to be at 2030 where, to meet our SDG goals. And FSM has a big role to play in delivering it. And unlike the MDGs, the SDGs actually want this whole chain to be measured. So both our work our early analysis in Orissa, but also the work we are doing with eGov will help us also better track the SDG 6, so to say, across these cities. Then we did some projections. I hope these come true. But essentially, where we are today, in spite of all the construction activity and the great momentum we've had, but kudos with all the kudos that are required for getting us there. Means we still are at 1% of the total population. 14 million means of India's population is still around 1%. And then if we by 2030 cover all our smaller cities, we should be serving more than 250 million people with just FSM. Yeah. So this the context of this masterclass is essentially to look at how do we better govern the FSM system, not only technically, but in a operational governance framework, right? So what kind of regulations, what kind of structures will help us get to FSM systems not failing like STPs have done in the past, or like all general urban infrastructure does has always been doing. So we spend a lot of money in constructing them, the general general knowledge around urban infrastructure is that we fail in maintaining them. Most failures are in maintenance. And to add to that, FSM systems, if you contrast it with underground sewerage, FSM systems costs are 60 to 75% in operation if you take the 20-year life cycle of the system. While in sewerage, it's 50-50. So having good performance on FSM is kind of important in re-establishing the identity of FSM, that it is a cheaper, more appropriate solution for our smaller cities. So there are multiple benefits for us wanting to move here. And then means if we put it in this in a framework and we just look at what we've achieved in the last few years, which is phenomenal, and where we need to go. If you remember, means the people who've been around this table for a while will remember that the first projects were started in 2015. The piloting exercises beyond Devonhalli, with BMGF and DFID coming in for a set of pilots, then BMGF funding Project Nirmal, which is practical action, and ourselves in Orissa. There was a clear piloting step that was incorporated, which was backed by a policy step, which was both at national level and at state level. And then a group of us, Chari and others, managed to even get means the Amrut funds flowing into the sector, which have seen this mushrooming of plants across the country, right? And this is we are at the, as we just discussed, we are at the tip of the iceberg. There's going to be very many more. So at this means given that there is this 100 FSTPs, we are now in a I think we are in a position to start thinking of how we operate them in an efficient manner. And that's why there are a couple of things that we think are important at this stage, including creating this this platform which eGov will present after the initial Excel program is presented. Yeah. We are going to kind of try and understand that in spite of different states having different models, some for going in for integrated FSM services, some having concessions, annuity-based concessions, some going completely with the public sector and SHGs. FSM itself, assets and operations need to be monitored around a set of common parameters, whatever they might be. And we'll get into the parameters. The idea of this session, of the following session after the introductions, will be to get into understanding which parameters are important to be measured across the value chain and how to measure them, what kind of data goes into it. It will also help us, for example, establish levels of service. So when these contracts are written out, we can further refine the levels of service that we demand from, let's say, the private sector or even from a public operator. Yeah, means how many days can one wait before the septic tank is cleared? Water, means is even in an open market. So we'll go into the indicators then. We'll then show you the tool which has its own dashboards, which are kind of automated on Excel. So that's interesting, but it has its limitations too, and we'll talk about it and why we think the eGov Digit platform is a great leap forward because of its being online, open source, and easily mineable. Today we have all of you here from the different TSUs, from the National PMU2 and WashI and CPHO support people are here. We are very keen to learn from you on what the next step should be. Can we experiment with this in some states and see whether the tools are working? How do we create a version 2, etc.? And then on the eGov CPR effort, we want to also come back to you to discuss the operational model in each state, as the national platform that eGov and we are working together is going to be all inclusive. So it will allow for various models to get informed by it. But I'll leave that for later. Yeah. So essentially, that's the this is the agenda. After this introduction, I'm very keen to go into a round of representatives from each state, kind of at state TSU and the national TSU, telling us about what whether there's any demand for operational data yet at the local level. How when do you think that that's going to become important to government? What are the triggers for things like that to happen? Then the next part is the first part of the class itself, which is about deep diving into how do you collect the data and what do you measure and why do you measure what. Yeah. The next after that there will be an introduction to the template, and finally there'll be a small session on trying to familiarize people with the template. And before eGov does the presentation on how we are thinking through the various versions of the digit platform, FSM digit platform. And then we will discuss, means we'll take some clues from you on whether we are, means how we should take this forward. Oh, I should have mentioned earlier, we are recording this session. I hope that's okay with everyone. Yeah, means it'll just help us make notes and to understand and revisit this session later if required. I hope that's okay with everyone. If not, do put it in the chat and we can discuss it. So with that, I'm keen to come back to this this part of it, which is that if we were to just reflect from each of our own states, the states and the ministries that we are working with currently, to kind of reflect on when do we think that, means do we think that operational monitoring is yet an important consideration. Yeah. So can I can I request people to come in? Can I ask Suresh from you if you could tell us about UP, about a bit about the status on the construction of the FSTPs and whether there's any demand from governments for operational management, for recording operational data. Suresh, are you there? Or someone else from CSC? Sorry,
I'm here.
Yeah. Oh, Suresh, yeah.
See, as of now, the focus is on the hardware side, but certainly the software side of, getting the operations streamlined and, to have evidence to support that whatever, funding has gone into it is making sense. As a good practice, we'll have to push and the state would be keen to get it. But at the moment, because the institutions who are involved are basically UP Jal Nigam and all those people who have who do not have much, directly interest on these things. In fact, operation and maintenance of even the existing STPs in UP are being handed over to private companies, like one city, one operator. So this is a new model in UP, I would say. So we don't know when the assets are created after that, if they would do a similar thing that they would hand it over to ULB or maybe to some operating companies. I hope that answers.
Yeah, thanks very much, Suresh. Then should we go down to Orissa? Pritish, means we have some feedback from there. We've been working closely, but it'll be good to hear your insider's view of what you think is happening.
Sure. This is the last meeting that we had with Principal Secretary, where you were there, Punita, and everyone. So, well, after that, definitely the the focus has shifted to data analysis and looking keenly into the data. Though we have a daily kind of update on, say, the plant utilization, but the cost factor were never looked into. So now the state has started looking into it, and since we're going in for further construction of the plants and at the smaller ULBs as well. So so from now on, if we are able to kind of groom the ULBs to look into the cost factor and the distance covered or the number of households covered, it will be really good. So the state is definitely looking at it. So there's a dashboard being prepared. There's a app that's getting prepared. So definitely, data is something that the state is looking at. Yeah.
Thanks very much. Can we go over to you, Dr. Chari, for Telangana and AP?
Yeah, thank you. Good morning. Maybe Dr. Malini can chip in as if I miss out anything. So I think this whole exercise will be relevant because we are learning every month, every day. New plants are being added on a date, on a monthly basis. Every month, a couple of plants are getting added to the stock, if I may say so. So there is a great deal of learning that's happening, and there's a lot of projects are likely to come up. So I think this learning of understanding the efficiencies, understanding the data as such is very relevant to inform the next set of activities. Maybe we can do much better course correction before damage gets done. So that's number one. I think the issue will be with regard to the cost. Since many projects are under PPP operation, we have the macro costs, which are the tendered cost or the private sector, the public sector cost. But the private sector costing and whether they will reveal all the data, unit operation data, and the micro level, different components of the different technology operations is something we need to nudge them. But I think it's worth an attempt. But on the overall efficiency side, I think it's extremely relevant and timely because we can incorporate the learnings of the initial 10-15 projects and see what can be done in the subsequent set of projects. And, that's all I can say. Dr. Mali, anything you want to add? Colleagues are asking.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Just one point. I think our experience at AP and Telangana is, the appetite for monitoring the operations of the plant and utilization of the plants is extremely high. And interest in using technology to monitor is also extremely high. Of course, e-gov is present in Andhra and integration can happen quickly, whereas Telangana is in the process of developing its own software and working with us, and Jyotsna from our team works very closely with them in supporting in instituting. One of the other reasons why both the state governments are very keen to monitor the operations and the costs is because they are looking at rural-urban integration, and they are seeing how this can be achieved. And I think mapping the operations and operational efficiencies and costs would be extremely important to them.
Wow. Thank you very much, Chari, Malini. That was really encouraging. Means also, means while there isn't a consolidated view in Odisha, but there are means there is going to be some sort of an MOU in Odisha too, as we are seeing, which will link urban and rural. Means that's also very interesting. And that appetite that you talked about, Malini, was super useful. And with Professor Chari, I can't agree more that means operational intelligence is going to be quite critical in this sector. Thanks so much. Rajiv is here from Tamil Nadu, right? There you are.
Rajesh. Yes. Okay, so I think a lot has been spoken, and just borrowing from building upon what others have mentioned. Primarily, at this point, we have two functional FSTPs, so to speak. One is state constructed, and the other one where we were involved in doing. And the second one, of course, is we've just moved to the O&M phase at this point. But the other thing is, in terms of the state, we are expecting a lot more plants to get commissioned between now and December, because there's a strong push towards completing. So we would think anywhere, probably at least I could say about 5 of them getting completed by December. And so that's when, of course, a lot of this need would kick in, essentially. And as others mentioned, of course, the MOU cluster approach is something we're also using. Almost, I would say about 50% of the FSTPs would follow a cluster route. So then tracking the operation and maintenance has even more importance because of the interest that would lie from there. So yeah, and then we are slowly, so from the 2 FSTPs that we have, for example, Karunguri, we've had some lessons of around how easy or difficult has it been to work with the ULB, because in these cases, primarily in terms of O&M, the ULB is taking over responsibility of managing the FSTP. So we have some experience of working with Karunguri in terms of how it's been. But it's still quite early, and as these new plans come up, I think this exercise will be pretty useful to sort of come up with a broad template and framework that we can go across to many more ULBs and help them make this transition from the construction, because right now the focus is so much on the construction and getting it complete, to move over to the operations phase. We've started some work, but of course, I think a lot of this exercise would be useful towards making that leap and transition.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. Thank you. PG, do you want to talk a bit about Karnataka? Are you guys active across the state at the moment?
Yeah. So Karnataka, on the urban side, I must say that after Devnali and a little bit of effort, it's not really gathered traction. And to brief you specifically about the state, maybe Sandhya can also add, but we are working more on the rural side. I mean, I do believe Karnataka will be a state that will, it's pretty much there, around the corner in terms of the urban side also taking off. There have been many attempts to try and get consultants on board to look at the entire state and so on. But it's got stuck for lack of appropriate kind of leadership in the urban department of the state. But having said that, I think that is just a little time away. But on the other hand, rural is moving much faster in Karnataka, it looks like. Again, because of a very aggressive officer who's leading it. But I want to quickly comment more on the exercise itself. A couple of general comments from my side. I know it might get covered in the subsequent sessions. But I mean, I think I want to endorse this whole thing that we are not just looking at FSTP, but the entire value chain. And I think that's absolutely right. And besides operational performance, the obvious performance of efficiency and so on, I think the asset utilization as a variable that you referred to, both on the treatment side and the whole capacity utilization. You set up things with a certain planned capacity in mind, what actually is coming to the plant is going to be a pretty important variable to track. What was conceived at the time of planning versus reality. Thus, we need to learn something from that. I also think cost effectiveness as a fundamental driver for the whole monitoring framework is an important dimension. And I would like to add a couple of dimensions, which probably is there in your framework when you do the details. But the whole thing about sludge characterization itself, I know it's not connected directly with FSM monitoring, but there's no other platform or occasion on which anybody is getting more data on sludge. So if all these, as part of the monitoring, if you're also able to monitor influent quality variation and get a sense of how across the country and across different contexts, we are finding that would be useful data to add, I think. And reuse, I'm assuming the reuse side of things also is being potentially planned to be tracked. And this whole business of O&M sustainability that you talked about, I think that's important. One other suggestion on looking at the monitoring whole thing is to later on use this data not only to know how an individual situation is panning out, or how individual situation is working out. I think it's good to see if we can build correlations between the FSM performance in a particular location to certain parameters that drive that performance. The context that drives that performance. The context could be connected to, say, weather, or could be connected to the level of development of the toilet and containment infrastructure in that state, or it could not to do with monsoon, rainfall, groundwater, whatever it might be, so that we are able to answer this question on in which situations is FSM turning out to be an ideal best fit solution, and in which situations maybe the towns are struggling with performance, and these assets are not delivering and so on. It might be useful to build those correlations as we go forward. That's it. I think if you want more data on Sandhya, Sandhya, if you want to add something more on Karnataka, that'll be good.
Yeah, thanks, PJ. Nothing else to be added as such, but I would definitely look forward to this exercise because, as PG rightly pointed out, maybe next 1 or 2 years, we'll see a lot of action kicking in the urban side of Karnataka, but the rural side will definitely benefit from this. And most important thing is, it's usually assumed that, the ULBs will take care of the operations and everything will be like managed well, but that's definitely a very big challenge today and a huge gap. And I'm hoping that we'll get good insights from this exercise from different contexts as you all are planning, and this will be useful exercise for us. Thanks. That's it from me.
Thanks, Sandhya. Thanks, PG.
Can I add something here?
Yeah, sure.
Just wanted to say that with BMGF support, CSC Lab is initiating around 100 FSTPs, which includes also select co-treatment facilities, testing and characterization of the wastewater before it comes and after it is treated. So just wanted to add that. So I think to some partners we have already started writing them saying that we would need support for access to these FSTPs. But it is across country, different technologies, they would be selected. Every quarter, there would be around 25 FSTPs data, inlet, outlet done. And also we are thinking of simultaneously, other than the lab, the CSC team would be doing the, solid liquid quantities coming, and whether the facilities which are designed, they are utilized to the extent which they are supposed to be treating, or they are not receiving adequate facilities. So I think from that point of view, it would be useful. And I just wanted to add, I think PG indicated that there is a need for characterization and doing a study for a different FSTP. So we are taking up 100 FSTPs.
Very good. Thanks, Suresh. From SEPT, can I call on Shreya? Are you there? If you want to, can tell us a bit about Maharashtra.
And one more small thing, Subhagatu, can I add?
Acha. Okay, sure.
Just that wanted to say, in UP, all the FSTPs have 5-year O&M built in. Right. So the third-party rights are created through private sector, whoever is coming to implement those projects, which includes the FSTP and the co-treatment facilities. So right. This is one. And one more point I finally missed out. I don't know whether this entire FSM value chain, which we are considering, whether co-treatment is also part of this, or we are only focusing on FSTPs. So I would like this clarification that are we going to, because there will be a lot of co-treatment facilities coming up.
Yeah, no, definitely co-treatment will be a part of it too in the larger module. In this version 1, we've just attempted to hold on to it. But in the eGov module, for example, which will be the full blown up one, all of this will surely be there. Omkar from SEPT, who is...
So, good morning. I'm Yogashika from SEPT.
Yeah.
So in Maharashtra, so far there are around 62 FSTPs that are operational and another 120 that are under construction. CWASH SEPT has also developed these 2 tools that that go by the name SaniTab and SaniTrack to track the performance of the private service operator that are working in the cities of Vai and Sindar. So we did have a little bit of, we did face a little bit of resistance in the beginning when we tried to institutionalize these tools in the city of Vai. But over time, considering how it sort of caters to all this.
Oh, we've lost Yugasha. Maybe we will. No, we can't hear you, Yugasha. Sampath, you want to say something from CPHEO side, whether there would be any interest there, or on the operational side, which is not only technical?
Sorry, I think I got disconnected.
Yes, you're back. We can hear you now.
Okay. So I was talking about, I'm not sure till what point I got disconnected.
We heard that there was initially some resistance, but then,
right.
Yeah.
Sure, thank you. So initially we did face slight resistance in the city of Vai, but now they have happily embraced these two tools, and they also see the benefit of it because through these two tools, they are able to keep track of the desludging operations in the city. And it sort of caters to all the stakeholders, the municipal councils, as well as the private operators. So we are looking forward to sort of scale this up to more cities in Maharashtra, since these were sort of born out of our experience in the cities of Vai and Sindar. We're also looking forward to sort of tracking the treatment side of it. So far, it tracks the performance of the private operators and also creates a database of the on-site sanitation system and property level details. Yeah, so we're really happy to be a part of this masterclass and looking forward to learning more about the data templates and how we can systemize this whole monitoring process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. From Washai, can I invite someone, Sampath or Vipul or anyone else? Then shall we, anyone from KPMG here? Akanksha Yogita?
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Hi, Yogita.
So, I won't be able to add much on the, demand from the field in terms of such a tool, which will monitor the operations of FSTPs. Maybe on state intelligence, Washai colleagues would be in a better position to add inputs, but definitely as we are moving ahead and we are, getting into more and more states and FSTPs are being initiated in several small towns, I think such a tool would be very useful, and the data that would, feed in, the data that will come from such a tool would feed into, better policy decisions maybe going ahead in terms of FSSM. Also, there are several states like UP and all which are in a very initial stage of, building that entire FSSM ecosystem in their states. So reaching out to the administrators with this tool could be a very good, could be useful. Since they are at an initial stage, maybe we can intervene early, building some IEC and awareness around this tool with these administrators should be helpful. Thank you.
Thanks very much for those insightful comments.
Yeah, this is Sampath here, sir.
Yeah, Sampath, great.
Yeah, sorry, I missed out. So actually, from CPHEO point of view, yes, we started collecting the database from the states. But the database, it's we think that it's not reliable because whatever the data is being sent, it's not cross-verified. And of course, you are aware that, we have developed master database that we have circulated to all our partners, and we are still waiting to receive response from that. And recently, Dasra and Professor Chari and Sasanka, we all have had a discussion. Then we are planning to take it forward further, so that if the database is filled in, then those information can be shared with all our partners, and that becomes proper database. So that's the thing. But from CPHU also, we are trying to get develop an MIS platform apart from whatever it's available with SBM.
Okay.
So that's the development. But at the same thing, we would like to learn from this exercise, how we can take it forward together with CPHU and PMU. That's the thing.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Sampath. Before we come to Sasanka, someone from Athena wants to say something around this related to your current work, Athena? Parul or Yoon? Arjun?
Thanks a lot, Swagato. This sounds very interesting, and we are actually pretty excited. So one thing that we're also trying to learn about is that to be able to learn about other monitoring frameworks. And so part of the current CWISE MLE dashboard and indicators also include the FSM, so the FSTP and SDP monitoring indicators. So we definitely look forward to learning more about this and to also see if there's any convergence with the CWISE MLE monitoring framework. Yeah, so thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much. Sasanka, are you there? I'd seen you in the morning. No.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, yeah, there. Yes. We can't hear you, Sasanka.
Yeah, I'm just listening in.
Yeah.
The effort is very much required. I just getting started, putting a database together of all these things, monitoring these things. It's a quite an effort to do that. Happy to today watch and learn where this is going, and then see how we come out with this. I just wanted to mention that you're all familiar with the QA project that we've been doing. So as part of that, we have also come up with a few parameters which a city might like to monitor on a regular basis in order to see how FSM is being, how well or how good the FSM service is overall along the value chain. So it'd be interesting to sort of compare notes on, what you have visualized as a monitoring tool and what the quality project also has. So from that perspective, I think very interesting to see.
Right. Thanks, Sasanka. I'm looking forward to this too. Do flag to us towards after seeing the tool what you felt. There might be further work and overlap and work that we can do together.
Sure.
Venkata, anything at your end at this stage?
Thanks, Shubhakanta. Nothing specific. I think in the last 5 months, I'm new to the space of sanitation, but it's great to note the level of progress that has been made in the last 3 years. And my mandate at the foundation is to try and see if we can get the the advanced technology into the overall FSM space that is being developed over the past few years. And I see a very strong potential for that, given the action that's been happening last 2 years. More recently with the FSTP tenders and so on. I'm keen to understand, this is a great masterclass in that sense, to see what more value add can be brought to the table when you're engaging with the private sector to come up with investments, to come and participate in this space and ensure that we can scale this up meaningfully, leapfrogging some of the conventional solutions that would otherwise have got implemented, right? So I think in that sense, this is fantastic and happy to be a part of this and learn from this. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Venkata. I think if you, unless someone wants to say something at this stage, I'll request Punita to kind of start the presentation on the tool and the exercise. Punita, over to you.
Thank you.
Wow, you got a fancy backdrop, Punita.
Yes, I used yours. Can Neha share the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, I mean, just so I mean, there is a 5-minute coffee break after Punita's talk, but do feel free to ask questions anytime during the the discussion. Please completely, and actually we'll appreciate that very much. Will be very helpful. Yeah. Yeah, means unfortunately we can't serve you tea and coffee. Hopefully you will get some for yourselves. It's a long session, but thanks so much, and over to you, Punita.
Okay, thank you, Shubhakatu. And before I go into the presentation, listening to all the proposals or suggestions that has been raised, there is a high expectation on the session. So I do hope that this particular 20-25 minute session will be actually setting up the foundation for the second part, where we will be sharing the template, and how to use that particular template will be helpful. We are for this particular presentation or session, I'm not going to go into detail of the exercise that we have done in Odisha. We just want to take some learning lessons and then make it as broad as possible, because we do understand that every state has a different approach in handling the FSM. So it will not be 100% replicable. So we are bringing it to a broader level where it can be used by the relevant agencies if they want to. So going back earlier, what has been mentioned, can I proceed? Okay, going back on this FSM milestone, we know that at the entire, in a broad sense, Swachh Bharat mission started with one man's vision, and the entire idea of providing a solution which solved one problem, which is open defecation, also created another problem, where now things are getting pulled up in certain locations. It need to be emptied, where people used to openly defecate everywhere. Now they're actually focusing on toilets. So now that created another challenge. And that is the challenge that actually initiated the entire full-scale FSM chain. However, to ensure that full-scale FSM chain to continue in perpetuity sustainably requires constant monitoring and data evaluation. So that's what we are trying to get in this particular masterclass. We want to show that what potential information that you may have to start looking into, so that you can actually plan up how to create a more sustainable and more innovative FSM approach. Next slide, Neha. So there'll be a couple of, one slide on dissection of FSM chain, which I'm very sure everyone here are extremely familiar. Then we want to segmentize activity and all the processes, as well as the key cost drivers, which is related to financial component. And the third part of this presentation will be diagnosing FSM performance. So and of course, diagnosing FSM performance, I'm still again going on a very broad level. So eventually, depending on which agency taking it out, then they have to focus on that, whether it's a combined technical and financial, or whether it's purely technical or purely financial. So there's a decision that relevant agencies have to make. Next slide, Neha. This is something that everyone has seen and known, but one key thing about this particular masterclass session, we are only focusing on the highlighted, we are only focusing on the highlighted segment, which is a downstream of the FSM process. But one key component that we need, key awareness that we need to have is there are a series of components such as policy, whether it's a policy matters, whether it's a regulatory matter, planning, design, construction, O&M, and financing. Every single aspect need to be looked at and reviewed daily or periodically throughout. So depending on which agency that you are coming from or whoever you are advising coming from, so these are the components.
Hello, have we lost her? Hi, Punita. Hello, Punita.
Cut off. Neha, can you move to the next slide, please? Okay, what you can see here is actually the activity, the three main activity, or in financial aspect, or when we want to evaluate financially, we call it cost centers. So that's what you can see here, which is customer service, looking into planning and logistics, dislodging operations, which covers dislodging service delivery and the transport aspect of it, and finally the FSM component. So these are the three elements that we are looking at in this particular slide. So one key when you're looking at this particular slide, what I would like to share is when you look at the activity portion here, it can be done by one or more business entities. It's not necessarily, this doesn't reflect the number of companies or businesses that need to be involved. It is just merely covering the activity aspect of it. And if one single entity is looking at this, all the three entities, it's essential for the recharge cost being applied. What is recharge cost is, for instance, you can see for all the three activities, there are similar cost drivers, which is manpower. So that will actually give an indication that the same people in the company might be doing more than one role. So a recharge cost need to be applied. And how the recharge cost is applied is you have to identify what are the appropriate factors, either man hours or number of calls or volume of sludge. And even other factors can be identified. That identification will be used to determine how much of that manpower cost will be plowed into customer service or dislodging operations or the treatment aspect of it. If there are the work scope covers more than one activity. And looking into this particular breakdown, which is three main activities or cost centers and cost drivers for relevant cost centers. Again, we are not going extremely detailed, trying to put in what potentially is applicable for in a generic fashion for every single FSM service out there. Using this information can actually drive the policy direction, the regulatory framework, what are the business model that's going to, that the particular ULB or state is looking at, the service quality, what kind of service quality you want to design, how fast the service quality in a sense that how good your level of service is in responding to the request, or how good the appliance is, as well as the service pricing. So how the service is going to be priced, whether it's going to be subsidized, full cost recovery, rebates from the government. So that is the period of looking into these particular cost centers and the cost drivers. Neha, next slide, please. Okay. For the three slides, and I tried to combine the entire aspect of diagnosing the FSM performance based on the cost centers. So the first one, we're looking at disludging operation, but you'll be seeing the similar categorization appears again and again. So I would like to explain what that categorization are. So for instance, the first thing that you're looking here is actually the daily log. Daily log looks into the day-to-day operation and collecting every single information that happens in the day-to-day operation. That is what daily log means. Quantitative data are data that is very physical or statistical in nature, while qualitative data is abstract and intangible information. That means you have to evaluate. It doesn't say immediately, you cannot say it's 40 trips, but you'll be going into 40 trips where 3 is successful, 2 had additional services needed, and the balance are successful. And in successful cases, you'll be looking into why it is successful. So that is the qualitative nature of this data that we are collecting. The next component we're seeing here is fixed. I would like to ask whether, can you see I'm moving the mouse here if I'm pointing? If someone can tell me if you can see I'm pointing the mouse.
No, Punita, you might have to annotate.
Yeah. Can you see now? Okay, never mind. Here. Okay, now you're looking at cost drivers. When we're looking at cost driver, what we are, there are 2 main categories, which is fixed or overhead. Another one is variable cost. I think in general, we all know what is fixed, what is variable. So I'm not sort of like pledging here, whatever that I have put up under the fixed cost is definitely a fixed cost. It's really depending on the system. So this will be something that need to be determined by the relevant businesses, because how they design their business. So whether some will be fixed or, like, for example, let's say manpower. Maybe for certain businesses, they actually appoint taking people on seasonal fashion. So it will not be a fixed cost. It will be a part may be fixed, but another part may be variable. So really those things can change. But for the purpose of discussion and the presentation, I'm actually grouping up some of these cost drivers as fixed and some of it is as variable. That is very in a generic level. The third component that you'll be seeing in the next, this particular slide and the next 2 slides is what I mean by activity-based analysis. Yeah, what is this? And what is activity output analysis and what is feasibility? Activity-based analysis, looking into comparing one parameter, one data set with another data set to establish the operation, the services efficiency. I think someone have to go mute there. Okay, I'll proceed. Activity-based analysis looks into these, the operation and the business and services efficiency and effectiveness. So it's sort of like looking internally, what is working internally for that business and what is not working. While activity output analysis looking into the sector, the entire FSM management and the sector. What are and then strategic use of that data, how this data can be strategically used to improve the sector, not internally, not the business. The third component is feasibility. Feasibility aspect links technical parameters with financial parameters to achieve both activity-based analysis and activity output analysis. So these are the terms that you'll be seeing during the course of this presentation. So I will not be repeating that. So when we do these three component of analyzing, what we expect to achieve is whether we are having the right business and operating model or whether we need to tweak it or change it. We can use this information to do an internal benchmarking. That's means benchmarking one department with another department or one personnel with another personnel and services, or externally with a different entity to see that, like creating a league table between VLPs, who are doing better, and then actually rewarding or incentivizing. Again, I am going back and forth, like looking from a state angle, looking from a UNB angle or a private sector angle. So if some of the suggestions or proposal I'm putting in is confusing, please feel free to interrupt and ask questions. And of course, the other three is, as I mentioned here, one is to look into how to make the business and the services operate and function better. And another one is how to use that information externally, and then how to look into the feasibility aspect of it, to achieve both the internal and external aspects. Now, specifically looking into disludging operations, one key component, later in the slides, we will share some of the findings that we had using similar approaches, not to this particular detail, but similar approaches. What we found out, what was the hypothesis earlier, and what we actually found on the ground. Okay, I'm not going to run through every single word, but probably I'll pick some of the key components, because the details we will run in the next session when you look at the template. So when we look into activity-based analysis, key items that probably we can learn when we compare the data. So the lighter box here is actually what are the parameters that you can compare with to achieve, for instance, how many personnel are required, and what is the performance of that personnel, either as an individual or as a team. Team, for example, when it comes to disludging operators, could be drivers and could be support services where they actually go and prepare the site for the services. So this is likely the teams. And another thing is a number and type of tankers required, and what is the tankers performance. When you're talking about tankers performance, it's not just tankers in a generic fashion, tankers in a term of the models. Let's say there are 3 models being used in a particular state. Which of these tankers actually have a better performance compared to the other? So when you're talking about performance, not just number of trips, like what are the maintenance costs required for them? What kind of mileage they can do before maintenance are required? And as well as what is the fuel consumption like? So that is the performance aspect we're looking at. The fourth component, what we can achieve by comparing these parameters at the bottom here is identify what are the qualifications and skills necessary, so that proper training programs or identifying appropriate personnel to these particular services. And last but not least is level of service across category. What kind of level of service is being rendered across the category of customers? When I use the term category or band of customers here, there are 2 aspects we're looking at. One is category of customers in terms of whether within the catchment zone or externally. Another one is whether they are domestic customers or commercial or institutions. So I'm actually just using one single term saying that whether it's a category or a band. Now, when you look into the output analysis, you can see the lighter box here. So these are the items that can be compared. The data is already here, data that need to be gathered. What we can achieve is personnel and tanker optimization, whether the tanker is actually sitting idle most of the time or actually running. Tiered pricing services, whether the services can be actually priced based on affordability and based on the level of service that is being rendered. That means if you actually render the service faster, whether you can charge higher, or whether if you have a certain gap or more comfortable delay time in providing the services, whether the services can be lower or whether it's tied up to a certain zones. So these will actually be tied up later to my slide on customer service aspects. So I'll come to that later. And these data also can be used to determine action plans, such as logistic planning, service allocations, benchmarking, and determining whether intermediary fecal sludge reception centers and standardization efforts. What are the standardization efforts needed in order to make the service better for the sector? So these are the items that can be looked at. And on the feasibility part of it is, whether it's a fixed cost or variable cost, both when we compare again the total cost for this particular activity, one thing that we will find is whether what kind of optimization or business process re-engineering can be done. So like, for example, let's say you take a manpower cost over the total cost, and then you compare it against the volume of sludge being transported. So that will actually decide whether it's top heavy or bottom heavy, or whether too many people doing too little work. So those are the kinds of feasibility decisions that can be made. And another thing is, I know that a lot of places do not collect financial information. I think technical information, a lot are being connected, but or engineering information, but financial information is not there yet. So as a precursor, certain acceptable ratios of what is the percentage of disludging operation costs per account should be over total FSM costs. Those are the components that need to be agreed. That means for disludging operations, treatments, as well as customer service, what is the apportionment in terms of percentage over total FSM cost should be established as the first precursor benchmark. Then, by collecting this information, you can cross-check whether is that being achieved or whether it's under-provided or over-provided. For instance, let's say disludging cost for this particular city is, let's say, 70% of the total FSM cost. So that means serious business process re-engineering and optimization need to be done. But let's say it's about 30% or 40% or even 50%. So that sounds reasonable. So these are the elements that can be looked at. Second part of it is distribution of costs over cost drivers. Some of the cost drivers, if it flags up, especially the generic ones, I think earlier, Neha, can you go to the earlier slide? Earlier slide, Neha?
Yeah, is this
okay,
the one?
So if you look, yes, this is the one. So if you look, these are the cost drivers that you saw appearing in the previous slide. But I have put a short note here. If these cost drivers, which is an asterisk like admin and general or maintenance or general upkeep, these kind of cost drivers, if it exceeds 10% of the total cost for that particular cost center, further breakdown is required. For example, in one of the city, we found out that the general upkeep and maintenance came up to about 40-something%. So that means a lot of cost has been plowed or itemized either inaccurately or something unique is happening in that particular city. And what we found out is they spend a lot of money on landscaping that facility. So landscaping costs now became, in fact, the landscaping cost was even higher than the treatment cost. I think it ranged about 20 to 35%. So it became a significant cost driver for an FSM process. So that's what I mean in the next, back to the diagnosing FSM slide, yeah. So that's what I mean by distribution of cost over cost driver and focus on that particular areas. So to actually flag up what is actually driving that particular cost driver to be to stand out compared to the rest. And then selected cost drivers can be benchmarked against appropriate indicators. What I mean by indicators is, for example, maintenance and fuel costs can be actually compared against the indicator of tanker downtime. So we can pick up. I'm not recommending anything specific here. I'm just giving as a general guide. So appropriate cost drivers here can be manpower, can be compared against volume of sludge that is being transported. So something like that. So that will give a feel of whether the business that is being done, is it viable? Does it even make sense? Of course, the other aspects of it, for example, maintenance and fuel costs over the tanker to determine, and then mileage against maintenance over the type of tanker to determine whether the tankers we have, are they even the right tankers for the city or the area that we are serving. So whether are these tankers are cheap in capital cost but high in operation cost. So this is how things can be measured, or probably like cheap in maintenance cost, cheap in operation cost, but a lot of very high in insurance premium for whatever reason. So these will actually help us decide what kind of tanker technology or tanker models or brand that is appropriate. Next slide, Neha. Okay. Okay, for fecal sludge treatment, when it comes to activity-based analysis, it is pretty similar to desludging operation, except in one additional component is a level of compliance. So whether the system is actually complying, and that can bring in that can actually even bring in the component of what mentioned earlier, where even influent compliance level, because FSTP is actually designed for certain influent level, certain effluent standards. So that particular element can be built in. What kind of influent you're getting and what kind of effluent that you're getting in. So that will be under the activity-based analysis, something that is different from the disludging operation. In terms of output analysis, beside process and personal optimization and tiered pricing, one key component is when the data such as sludge volume over time against FSCP design, number of trips that is made per account, or breakdown and categories that are of unsuccessful service status, we can actually learn a couple of things. Number one, technology evaluation. What kind of technology being used in the particular FSTP? So whether it's appropriate, something need to be done, and its suitability. What are capital works requirement for that particular city? Whether more FSTPs need to be created, or whether collection centers need to be done, or whether we have to put up a connected services in that particular city. So this will actually give us that kind of understanding. And also innovative resolution. Innovative resolution, making things hybrid, using non-conventional technologies to provide solutions, or probably finding out resource recovering septage right from the source, component like that. So innovative resolution can be looked at. When it comes to feasibility aspect, it remains the same. And the unique part in the feasibility aspect here is the maintenance over the level of compliance. So because I put it as general level of compliance, comparison can be done. What is the maintenance cost for an FSTP when the influent or effluent that you receive are of certain quality? For example, if influent meeting certain qualities, does your maintenance cost go up? And if the maintenance costs go up, is it because the merely treatment process, or because some of the equipments are actually can't work anymore due to being overworked or unable to treat the influent that is coming in? Hence, the level of compliance of effluent actually dropping. So these are the comparisons that can be done on this maintenance cost over the FSTP overall cost and the level of compliance. And tiered pricing against, again, similar to what I mentioned during the for the disludging operations, because when I'm talking about tiered pricing, I'm not talking about tiered pricing for one single business activity. I'm talking in general for all three activities that we have mentioned. Next slide, Neha. Okay, for customer service actually more information. Ironically, customer service, we can gather more information on what we can do for the sector. So what I mean here is, okay, activity-based analysis remains the same. It's just that what kind of optimization or what kind of qualification will actually differ, but the general category remains the same. But when we look at output analysis, when I talk about type of look at the qualitative type of data that's been collected. What are the inquiry mode? What I'm referring to inquiry mode, for example, is whether people are writing in, requesting, making a phone call, or whether they're using social media or email. What kind of inquiry mode people are using, and which group of demography this particular inquiry mode is being used, young, old. So because really the demography of that particular city will dictate what kind of activities or solutions that need to be provided. So that's why you can see in the daily log component, when an inquiry comes in, whether the inquiry is a complaint or a request or whatnot, who are they, what gender, what is their age, where they're from, all those information need to be gathered. That will actually give us, and then the nature of that type of inquiries is, for example, request for a service, or probably complaint, or maybe dispute, or maybe challenging a dispute on the services or dispute on the billing. So that can be some of the categories for type of inquiries. Now we look into nature of inquiries. That particular inquiry, when people bring it up, is it actually a real problem on the ground, or is it something, a question they're asking? That means they want a lack of awareness that is happening. So that will be what we will consider as nature of inquiries. Using all this data set, okay, this particular data set, and then comparing one data set against the other as I've listed here, progressive FSM programs can be designed by identifying what are the priority zones, where the most calls coming from, and why, and who should be your target audience that will be appropriate for that outreach program or that has been designed, and the capabilities required to actually reach that particular target audience, as well as what kind of resolution that is needed and what are the services that need to be provided for. So this will be really like, this beats any survey, because this is a real inquiry from people living in this particular area calling in, rather than in a normal survey format where they are getting a call when it's inconvenient to them. When it comes to this form of data collection, this ULB or whichever company handling this actually getting calls when they are desperate for an answer. So this will be a real good sample of data set. And designing FSM programs based on this doesn't limit to just campaigns and awareness or education. It also ties up to the infrastructure needed for that area. So what kind of capital works or infrastructure needed, what kind of level of service that need to be rendered for that particular zone. So this will be how, and then whether this particular group has a capability to pay more. So which customer band they come from. So those kind of analysis can be done. And I think a couple of unique component in this particular customer service that I've added in is billing and collection. Because when I design these 3 slides, I make an assumption one single entity is actually doing all the one single business entity is performing 3 activities. So specifically because they are billing and collection aspect of it, some of the feasibility analysis that should be done is what are the billing issuance cycle time. So that means when a service is rendered, when the bill is being issued, how many days. So that need to be collected. And that should be tied up with collection efficiency, which is receivable cycle time. The moment bill is issued, what is the cycle time of people paying in? Because that will give a clear indication whether the company going to have a good financial health in a long term, or whether it's just a short term success. Like in 2 or 3 years, it may look good, but when we see that people are paying, taking time 1 year or 6 months to pay, then you know that there is something that need to be done. On top of it, the revenue over actual collection, over total customers and customers category and band, that need to be done as well. Because revenue may show very good projections or very good numbers, but in terms of actual collections, a huge deficit might be there. So how to mitigate or close that gap? Those are the answers that need to come up. How they can sustain while the gap is being closed, and how they intend to close the gap, and the cost of closing the gap. Rather than people just paying upfront, where the cost is just issuance of the bill, But now, let's say the gap that need to close is through civil court now, or getting a lawyer's notice to be sent. Now that cost will be increased. So those are the data that need to be collected here for under billing and collection. And I think the others are just something that not so essential, probably can be understood directly. I think there's a question. Am I supposed to, can I respond to the question direct? How do we capture what is required if no enquiries are there? So the assumption is people don't make enquiry. Okay, I think if no one making an inquiry, okay, I think if no one making an inquiry, that means nobody know there's a service, right? The only way one don't get an inquiry is the service provider didn't make themselves visible. If they make themselves visible, definitely there'll be inquiries. That is one way. So, for example, one of the common inquiries any business entity will get is request for demand dislodging. That is one common inquiry. And then in the case of scheduled dislodging is the moment they receive notice, definitely there will be an inquiry. The third component is, because the first one is if they have a problem, there'll be an inquiry, demand. They receive a notice for dislodging, definitely there'll be an inquiry. The third thing is they are billed. 100% they will have an inquiry. So I think that is given for. But on top of that, if the business didn't make themselves visible, that means they didn't even know there is a number I should contact. Who should I contact? So I think that is more got to do with the visibility of that business, getting their number or their contact out. I hope I answered that. Neha, can you go to the next slide, please? So talking about performance indicator in general, normally a balanced scorecard for a performance indicator, especially for this particular sector, we're looking into 4 aspects. Planning, operation and maintenance part of it, financial, customer service and capacity building. However, for the purpose of this masterclass, I'm not covering these 4 elements because really to start off, I suggest we go on the planning, operation and maintenance, then add on financial and customer service, or customer service and planning can come together, financial can come later. Reason being, when too many performance indicators are being imposed and the companies are just starting off, it can overburden them in terms of data collection. So unless we can make the data collection aspect as breezy as possible. Next slide, please. Some of the indicators that I recommend here are for the dislodging services and the treatment part of the services. So I have removed on the customer service part of it. Unless the customer service, because normally in the customer service part is we will talk about what are the response time or what are the resolution time and number of inquiries that comes in and number of inquiries that is being closed. Because yet to see a business, I am yet to see a business entity or ULB that actively managing a customer service. So I thought I should leave that performance indicator out. And even when I look into the financial data collections, I think a lot of harmonization need to be done. For example, what do we mean by manpower? And then we talk about what major scope of work or minor ancillary work. So what are the categorization? We have to establish these particular line items to ensure that when the data is collected, it can be compared or benchmark one agency against the other. Because right now, a lot of it is being pulled up under one single line item. When it comes to dislodging operations, I'm recommending about 6 parameters. Of course, the first one, if you can see here, this is talking about level of service. This is talking about goal. Total requests served per month and what are the targeted number of requests to be served. This is especially relevant for scheduled dislodging zones. The target is 100 disludging services need to be rendered. How many has been achieved? So collection of this per month data cumulatively over a period of a year will show what are the gap or whether the gap has been closed. The second part of it is request compliant to level of service per month. Okay, I put an asterisk here. Anything with an asterisk means some formula may need to be built in depending on what is the policy in that particular area. For example, let's say a flat out level of service for any request that is being made is 48 hours. So how many requests are actually served within 48 hours? So that is, I mean, in a simple way. But in some areas, maybe they decide for certain subzones, the level of compliance is, let's say, 12 hours. Another zone could be 48 hours. So then maybe you want to put a factorization, come up with a formula so you can get a single number if you do not want to have two sub-indicators. Total sludge volume transported over the total sludge volume that need to be targeted to be transported. So everything has a nominator and denominators to show if the gap is closed or there is no gap or the gap is widening. If the gap is widening, something needs to be done. That means there is something that is something is not working. Number of trips per tankers over targeted number of trips per tanker per day. This actually gives an indication whether the tankers are utilized, the tankers are on the go, or the tankers are sitting in the car park. We're looking into the downtime as well. So whether the tankers are having high downtime numbers compared to operating, that is one indicator. And finally, total number of accidents or incidents per month for the personnel or people or the customer. So that need to be recorded for the health and HNS aspect of it. When come to FSM, fecal sludge treatment aspect of it, total sludge volume received per month or design capacity of the FSTP. This is actually to show the FSTP utilization rate, as well as to guide the operator to plan whether they need to upgrade the facility or whether they have to construct a new facility. Total number of accidents or incidences, as well as total number of security breach. Accidences and incidences are if someone, for the personnel, as well as whoever that actually visitors or even trespassers, if there's any accident or incident need to be recorded. Security breach is actually whether the asset is vandalized or someone actually trespass into it, whatnot. So that is security breaches. Affluent compliance standards per month. Okay, this is pretty standard. Percentage of, again, I should have put an asterisk here. Affluent compliance also whether can be sub-indicators if you want the indicators to be based on the parameters, or it can be formularized with certain factors like BOD or COD has a higher value probably compared to ammonia. So we can actually establish some kind of factors and then give one single number to sort of show general health of that particular system. Percentage of tanker trips rejected per month. This is actually within, it's trying to imagine if a tanker comes in and it doesn't meet the FSTP influent design requirement and then the tanker get rejected. So how many such incidences are happening? So because this number will actually give an indication, if the number actually get high, gives an indication that the operator and the regulator policymaker need to manage this particular challenge. And the last but not least is total number of essential equipment downtime days per month. Essential equipment, why I put the word essential equipment? I'm trying to say in every facilities, there are a couple of equipment that will never work. There will be a couple of equipment, if it fails, the system will actually fail. So that need to be identified ahead. What are essential equipment for that particular facility? So if that essential equipment has a downtime days, that need to be recorded because that will have a significant impact on the affluent compliance. Those are that is on the performance indicator part. Finally, next slide, Neha. Okay. So this is the last slide before we go on the Q&A session. Didn't want to specifically go on very detailed numbers or which city it is because I think the numbers given by the relevant cities are in confidence unless I don't know, unless I leave it to CPR on the detailed analysis that we have done. But I just want to share some of the findings that we have made when we use the above analytics mode, applying to the data that we have collected. So, for example, if you see number 1, the earlier hypothesis or assumption made for this particular cities or a couple of cities was dislodging services are at optimum level because the number of trips were actually spiked up healthily. The pattern was growing, it was increasing. So the assumption made was dislodging services is functioning well. So shown by the number of trips coming into the treatment plant. But when we deep dive into further details, what we found out is even though the number of trips increased, the quality of service dropped. A significant number, I'm not mistaken, 30, maybe, I don't know, 30, 40% of the trips are only getting service 9 days after the request is being made. So that actually gave, yes, the number is increasing, but the quality is actually suffering. So next hypothesis based on ground understanding was the poor dislodging service quality was due to insufficient number of tankers. That got us into going to deep down into tanker utilization, on the nature of issues, what's actually happening on the ground. Excuse me. So what you can see here is 2 aspects of it. First part of it is there were multiple reasons why the service quality dropped. As you can see listed there, either the client delays the service, I mean they call, they plan, they're not on site, or they do not provide access, or they call, they wrongly made the request. The problem was maybe internal plumbing line, but they make a request for dislodging, so something like that. So the entire trip going to a location, coming back is actually wasted. And then second item, what we noticed was one service request lead to multiple trips. That means per household would never end with one single trip. It requires a couple of trips, and especially unique for these particular cities that we have studied. And another component is difficult to get personnel. At one point of time, they have more than 1 tankers, but they only have 1 driver. So this is an image issue or a branding issue for the sector. So that is another challenge. Coverage area increases travel distance and the time per trip. So that is another challenge we had. So every single challenge here, I mean, you can read it for yourself, but every single challenge here requires different solution. So if the client delaying, what is potential solution? Probably need to touch up with the local community, have local community representative being set up and given knowledge to go and verify to confirm what kind of services needed. And for instance, if I'm requiring multiple trips, then maybe need to do standardization of the septic tanks so that the future septic tanks that come on board has a standard size, so that the service become more manageable. So every single item that we found has a solution for it, but I'm just putting it here. And another key element we found out is almost all government or ULB owned tankers within the study area was extremely underutilized. So that was not even, the hypothesis was not right. The third component, hypothesis that is made is FSTP is exceeding the design capacity and need to be upgraded. How the decision was made is based on monthly average sludge volume that is being transported. But when we deep dive into it, what we found is some of the days, the sludge volume that is transported that means it exceeds the design capacity of the FSDP, but it's far and few. And there were days, for example, especially on Saturdays and Sundays, the FSDP is totally not utilized. That means there's an opportunity, pending all this upgrading initiative taking place or new FSDP taking place, the balancing or containment tanks can be put up, which will be very fast solution for this kind of challenges. Fourth finding, commercial property cross-subsidizing domestic. And in fact, this is the general, I think globally, commercial properties cross-subsidized domestic. But what we found, for that reason, commercial property had a higher rate compared to the domestic. But what we found in the cities that we are doing the study, less than 10% makes up commercial property. So the higher tariff have to be like seriously high to have any impact on that gap caused by domestic tariff being lower than the actual operating cost. insignificant impact of private sector participation in dislodging services. Even though this was not really said, but the way the initial programs was laid out, there was not much engagement with the private sector participation in the dislodging services. But the moment private sector participation was encouraged and rewarded, what we found out is within 6 months of private sector participation, they managed to deliver twice the volume of services compared to what public sector delivered within a gap of a year, within a period of a year. So what public sector did within a period of a year, private sector did twice of that in a period of 6 months. So really private sector participation, how it's going to be incentivized or rewarded in providing specific activity or cost centers need to be looked at. A lot of assumptions was being made based on this services requires 1 trip per household, which amounting to 3 meter cube of sludge being empty. What we found out in the cities that we have studied is, in average, it requires minimum 2 trips per household, and the average size of septic tank is 15 meter cube. Hence, that's why when we put up the earlier information, we try to be as generic as possible because it really need to be, the numbers you plug in or what data you want to flag up first, really, parameters you want to flag up first is really up to you. Okay, the third part of, the last part of it is, there was always a vision or an aim of wanting to do 100% dislodging in a 3-year cycle, and that is possible. Everything is possible as long as, you know, we have unlimited access to funds. But in this particular city, city A, which has only 50,000 population, they require 11 tankers to go around. So that is a very high number of tankers. For 50,000 population, they needed 11 tankers. And city B, which is about 1 million population, requires 347 tankers. And if you really look into the detail of the cost drivers and the cost of the tankers and the depreciation rate of the tankers, which is over a period of 5 years, these become totally not feasible when it comes to large cities. So these are the, there are a lot other findings, but I just decided to pick a couple of it to share with you all today. So I think with that, we come to an end of this session. You'll be seeing more details in the next presentation after the break where we have these templates.
Yeah, but Punita, if before we go into the break, if you can access the chat, there's been a lot of discussion while you were speaking around is this too complicated for smaller cities to maintain? How are these logbooks maintained? Who maintains the logbooks? How do you get access to them? If it's private sector desludging vehicles, individual ones, how do you do that? And Krishna Sarup has this you know, there's a comment from Krishna. You want to make that comment yourself, and Sandhya and then Malini? Krishna, you want to go first?
Yeah, thanks, Bhagat. Yes, so, right, yeah, this, so it's an interesting output and discussion on benchmark service levels. And where I'm coming from is that in a lot of places, the FSM operations are being run by private players. We are dependent on them for bringing the sludge to the FSTPs. And so all the customer service and even the desludging operations will end up having to work with the private sector to make the system successful. And in such cases, the effort of ULB or the institution, the government institution, will have to focus on how it becomes even more viable for private players to do better. And whoever are doing good will stay in the race. They will continue to service the city well. And whoever are not doing good, they get weeded out of the system, because there are quite a few private players for whom FSM is just a side business. And some are really into it, like that is their full-time operations. So the SLA should also incentivize people who do full-time operations. How do they get to improve their performance, buy better trucks so that their downtime is less, and the SLAs are designed to reward all these things. So that's what I was hinting at.
Thanks, Krishna. Sandhya, Malini, you want to come first, and then Sandhya? If Punita can answer all three, we are running half an hour to 40 minutes late anyway, but let's go on. These are very critical questions. Malini?
Just in continuation to what Krishna said, that the system is well thought out, and I understand that one needs to have a well thought out framework, but it might be a very ideal situation when the town has a utility which is looking into it and also looking at it from the point of view of whether it is viable or not. Whereas, when you're working in a small town with about 20,000 population, who will implement and, to what extent is the state also interested in understanding so much in detail about customer satisfaction and any issues during desludging? So would the state also be interested in knowing that, or would the state would just say, as long as I know that the plant is functional and what is the capacity utilization, and if it is meeting the norms, am I okay? So I think that those are some questions, and maybe the framework which is developed would give options to pick and choose for cities and states to customize. But yes, it's a comprehensive framework, but it does it can be a little overwhelming right now if you're looking at it from small city point of view. Capacities to look at all this information at the city level is, of course, another challenge.
Sandhya, you had a similar.
Thanks, Malini. You actually summed up all my queries in a very nice way. So, Punita, this is a very nice framework. You really touched upon each aspect of performance. We are not talking only about FSTP operations. We are talking about financial sustainability or feasibility. We are talking about customer satisfaction. What the way I see it is that if I am a city commissioner or a chief officer, this would mean something different to me, this whole framework. So as Malini rightly pointed it out, I might cull out a portion of it and be more concerned about, are the desludgings happening as per in a proper timeline? Is everyone being covered? Is the operator performing as per the agreed terms and conditions? But if I'm looking at it as a private operator, I would be more keen on the business model aspect of this. If I'm a regulator like an NGT or a state pollution control board, I would be more worried about the discharge standards being met or not. So I think it has like something or the other for everyone, but it's kept into one whole package. And it might need to be broken down or simplified if we want to really go out and implement on ground. I'll just stop at that.
Yeah. Punita, you want to just come back and then I'm wondering whether we'll request for the 5-minute thing later. But go on, Punita. Sorry.
Okay. I just if I want to just respond in general, just in case if I leave out, please flag it up again. If you look the whole thing in entirety, this is still at a broad level. We didn't go into very detailed or dissecting. And on the same note, depending on the capability and readiness of that particular agency or city, you should make a decision which data you want to start off first. But most of this information that we have presented, we had collected one way or the other for a small city. Then we talked into the bigger city. We started with the 60,000 city level first, and then we talked to the 1 million population cities. So yes, it can be done, but yes, it will take some time, because even these particular cities where they have collected the data, as and when we continue this exercise, they improvise, add in more details in the way they collect the data, then summing up. So I understand there'll be challenges when it comes to private sector getting involved, but there'll be some information private sector have to give. For example, if they're bringing in the sludge into a public treatment plant, they have to give certain information like where it's coming from and what is the size of the septic tank or who are the people they have served. They have to give that. What possibly they're not comfortable in giving is how much they have charged that person. So they may not want to share that because they'll be seeing, let's say ULB also providing the same service, they may feel it's a competition. So I think, yes, you're right, Malini, you have to sort of like tailor-make to your own city needs. It's not necessary. It's not like if you don't do everything, the framework won't work. But based on what you decide to collect, to that extent, you can do the analysis. But I just like to share a very short story. I do not know whether it's true or not, but it has been said many times. You know, like traffic lights, they have these counters, right? The red light will have a countdown counter, green light has a countdown counter. So we have seen that. So I do not know how true is it, but it makes sense to me. Apparently it started in Korea based on certain signs and certain facts. China replicated it. No, they imitated. They're pretty good at that. They imitated. The moment they imitated what has been done, they realized instead of the number of accidents going down, the number of accidents went up. Okay, so when they call back Korea and find out what happened, what they found out is in Korea the countdown is for the red light. That means people see there's another 5 seconds. I would rather wait. In China, they put the countdown for green light. That means I have another 3 seconds to beat the traffic light. So when we do an analysis, if we are not thorough, likelihood of us making a wrong deduction is there. So in terms of you selecting that information, I suggest that you select some from the technical, some from the financial. So at least you have some balance in both, not purely technical or purely financial. You pick like out of like maybe 20, 30 parameters there, maybe you pick 10 from technical and 10 or 5 from financial. So that gives you a more balanced approach compared to the rest. Okay, on talking about the expense part of it, right? I don't think it's going to be really expensive. It's going to be really expensive because at the present moment, we are using Excel spreadsheet. So we are not, there are no need to actually get a software system like SAP or whatever it is that's going to be costly. So you can use that. May not be, maybe a bit tedious, but I think even a non-executive staff or clerical level staff can be trained to feed in the data, but of course they will need people like you to analyze it. But feeding in data can be done by clerical people, but analyzing definitely, I think someone who has that understanding of that need to be done. So I hope that gives in general.
Yeah, Punita, I'll also just come in here with what we experience, Sandhya, Malini, Krishna, is that we first did it in Dhenkanal, which was run by Blue Water Company, right? Designed by CDD, right? There we had an integrated operation being done by Blue Water Company. So we had all the data daily, everyone, all the time, right? So it was nice and complete and easy to replicate, easy to analyze. When we took it to the other cities which the state government was running, and Pratyush knows this better than I do, there was were 3 or 4 levels of rounds of trying to get that data. So the first level of data we got was very top line, yeah, one number for everything. So after egging them, they started collecting this, and since those plants have been in operation for more than a year, we did manage to get monthly data from the 3 other cities and daily data from Dhenkanal itself. So increasingly the format is getting embedded. And in Odisha's case, for example, as Pratyush was saying, that while cities and even OWSSB, there's interest, but there is reluctance because it looks really heavy and strong. And there the model is very simple, means the reliance on the private sector compared to other states is much less. In that comfortable circumstance, also there was an initial hiccup, but means now the principal secretary is wanting this kind of data being maintained more regularly. And once this e-government Gov online tool comes into operation, it will be a matter of, let's say, once in a week, some data entry operator uploads, worst case. Yeah, otherwise there's a call center, the call center can upload it. So in that case, but in the private sector case, what data they will be comfortable giving is the data that they bring to the FSTP, I guess, where the exchange happens between private to private from one operator to the other, or public to private, whichever way. So those entry points, logbooks are anyway maintained. So it's about using those logbooks in a effective manner for system analysis. But there is no doubt that this is not the easiest exercise. Yeah, means and it needs policy action, continuous, whatever, not lobbying. Let's not use that word, but top down push also from time to time. I think we should go on to the next session. Means there was a 5-minute break planned at this stage, but given that we are running so late and we are very keen that you guys also spend some time to look at how the automated process is going to look. So I'll request Neha to come in at this stage. If anyone steps out for a coffee or something, means there was a 5-minute break. So please do that. But we'll share the Excel on the chat, and Neha will take you through the Excel tool, which is the version of what Punita just described. Neha, is that okay?
Yeah, that sounds good, Subhagato. I will quickly, before we go on, share the template itself in the Zoom box.
Yeah, means Neha has a few slides to introduce the template. And then means the idea was that we spend a couple of minutes, 15 minutes or so, for people to just use the template and see how the dynamic data, the dashboard is connected with the data you're inputting. But we should hurry it up, Neha, at our end.
Right. So I will quickly lay out the template through the presentation and just try to answer some of the questions that have come up about how we look at this, and we can then go on to the template itself.
And the template has been shared, right, Neha?
Yes. You should have
it in the chat. Yes.
Yeah, you should have received it by now. So if there are any pressing questions within the within this presentation, please let me know, and I'll stop to quickly answer those before we move into the Excel. Right, so in terms of the design of the template, and we've, Punita's already talked about this, it's important to look at the whole sanitation service chain, right? And within this particular template and the discussion on performance indicators, we're looking at desludging operations, transport and treatment of fecal sludge. So for each of these 3 aspects, we have some data collection tabs or sheets in the template. So for desludging, it's a very simple log. For both treatment and transport, we have 3 broad categorizations. So operation, non-wage expenses, and wages. This is where all of the data comes in. Now, these 3 thematic sets of tabs get aggregated into 3 separate dashboards, right? And therein comes the question of or what was pointed out earlier about, there are some aspects which would be more relevant to a particular group of stakeholders or a stakeholder, right? So for example, here, from the perspective of the ULB or maybe a call center executive who's managing the actual customer citizen interface, the desludging dashboard might be the most important. For the FSTP operators, it might be more important to look at the treatment one. But ultimately, all 3 of these are getting aggregated to look at the very top line numbers in the top line dashboard. What we've tried to do in this particular version of the dashboard in general is to keep it focused on identifying what these symptoms are, right? So before we go into a detailed diagnosis of wherein precisely the problem lies and how we come up with recommendations, identifying at the first stage what the symptoms are that we are trying to solve for. Right. So the data collection is we know we have different models wherein we involve a lot of different stakeholder groups at each step, has multi-scale data collection at different nodes. What do we mean by multi-scale? So for something like the daily operations, you will have data collected on a daily level, right? So how many requests come in a day, whether or not they're serviced, whether or not vehicles are available when it comes to the transport aspect of it, how much distance they've covered, how much fuel they've used, and on the treatment side, how much sludge was decanted at the treatment facility, FSCP or a decanting station. What do the treatment parameters look like on that particular day? On operational management, this is again related to the financials. So non-wage expenses like fuel, any vehicle maintenance, so those can be incurred on a daily or a recurring basis, right? When it comes to wages, they'll largely be a monthly phenomena. So that is at that level you can record it. Now we had some questions on how do we get this data in, right, from these different stakeholders. So when it's public, it's relatively easier, wherein, for the desludging operators is where you require some degree of manual to digital conversion. And herein we think the relevant agency who's coordinating these operations can ask the drivers and the helpers to maintain a daily logbook for recording any relevant information that can be digitized at a later stage. When it comes to private operators, and this is something that Shubhagato had mentioned right before this, they are giving some amount of information at the treatment site, right? So where is this sludge even coming from? What is the volume? But also some general information, some abstract information on the operations and maybe on the finances, depending on what the comfort level is, can be sought from the private operators on a periodic basis. So this could be at the time of the license registration or renewal. It could be a monthly or an annual exercise, whichever seems most suitable to that context. In the case of co-treatment, when we talk about the treatment side, operations is relatively easier, right? But on the cost side, and Punita, again, just referring back to what she said about recharge factors, those can be used to figure out how to apportion the cost based on some predetermined ratio, to figure out how much is the contribution of fecal sludge management to the treatment side costs. And of course, because we have different models across different states, and we have 4 of them up here, we will have different stakeholder groups collecting the data at each stage. So I will not go into this in a lot of detail. But you see that wherein, for instance, in the case of Orissa, on the treatment side, the operational data might be coming in from the self-help group. The actual financial data from the treatment side could be coming from the ULB department, right? In the case of Uttar Pradesh, it could be the private or public entity which is responsible for the STP or FSTP operation. So again, it varies across different states, and it'll have to then be put together. And therein comes the role of a central aggregator in that sense, that is taking all of these different sheets and collating them on a monthly basis, or at a higher frequency if that is possible. And of course, here at the next level, like going from urban local body level aggregation up to the state level, that is something that the TESUs could play an active role in and coordinate. So before we dive into the actual demo of the template and looking at that, just a quick overview of the strengths and limitations. So one of the most important things about this template is that while there are a lot of detailed indicators that we can look at, and those are important, this at the current level is abstracting some of those in a simple Excel-based design, and it gives you all of these key indicators at a glance across the service chain. It also allows for diverse service delivery models, and we saw early on that different states are looking at urban convergence, urban-rural convergence. So those are the things that are accounted for in the model. Differentiated tariff structures are accounted for in it. And again, it balances that need to standardize a little bit so that we are all measuring similar indicators and you are being able to use it for comparison with customization to the local context. The limitations to this, of course, are that given that it is an Excel tool, it happens, the data collection analysis happens in an offline mode, then you do require someone to collate it. There is limited process tracking, right? For example, to look at one customer starting from the desludging request to like tracking them across the sanitation service chain. So there are backward and forward linkages, but those are of course limited in this format. And for existing digital infrastructure, there is no direct plugin. You will have to see how this sits within that particular digital infrastructure. The information would have to be manually then ported into this Excel. Right, so with this, we move on to the actual template, and I'm going to share my screen right now. And so since we are a little short of time, I will start with the dashboards and we look at how some of these indicators work. And then I'll quickly take you all through the data collection tabs as well. We can stop as and when required to look at any specific aspects of it, right? So how do we start using this template? This intro sheet essentially lays out again what we've just discussed. So we have the building blocks of the template. We've seen that there are 4 data collection and entry tabs on the treatment side, 3 on the transport, and 1 on the desludging request. And it could be maybe just one entity filling all of them out. It could be 8 separate entities filling each of these 8 out. So here we have standardized the format. We have standardized the definitions. So unless there's something very specific that requires changing, it would be good if like the formatting and formulas are preserved as is. The dashboard tabs we've already had an overview over. So we'll actually look at them going forward. Underpinning these dashboards are some summary sheets, which are currently hidden from view. And again, these are very critical to the template working properly. So it's best if they stay hidden and they're not tinkered with. So where do we start? We start at the data registry tab, right? What is this data registry tab? When we talk about any ULB or any state level system, there are going to be specifics, right? For example, what are the type of vehicles that are in use? What are the vehicle license numbers? Details about these vehicles. Similarly, the personnel involved, not just in desludging, but let's say also on the treatment side, right? What the roles of these different stakeholders are. At the city level, what are the benchmarks that we are looking at? So for example, what is the level of service benchmark? What is the truck utilization benchmark? FSTP utilization benchmark? Daily number of trips. So those type of benchmarks, currently for this version of the template, we're looking at 5 of these most key benchmarks. Similarly, if you have urban-urban or urban-rural convergences, then you know which ULB are you serving, and which distance band is it falling in. So we have seen in the emerging discourse, 10 kilometers is often an often used number that comes up, right? So then is it a 0 to 10 band? Is it a 10 to 20 band? What is the extra cost for that band? So this actually gets auto-calculated once you put in the extra cost per distance band. So you can actually put down the tariffs for different types of stakeholders. You can, if you have any subsidy mechanisms in place, for example, in the case of slum households, and you can jot that information down. And finally, what are the treatment standards applicable? So we know that CPCB has a differentiated standard when it comes to state capitals and then smaller cities, and NGT also keeps coming up, keeps inputting into what these standards should look like. So herein you can specify what the treatment standards are that are applicable. And of course, in this we are looking at the effluent. We're not covering biosolids. With biosolids, there is a limited understanding in general of what these standards are in the first place. So this sheet is where you start first by putting in all of this information for the particular city. Once all of this is in, is when you can actually start using the template. In addition to this particular data registry, we have a ULB profile sheet wherein you can put down basic information about the city, its FSM system. You can also make a note of the personnel responsible for filling out the template. So each of the tabs, who's responsible, what is their designation, how to reach them. And if there's a shift flow diagram for the ULB, and if you're doing that as a recurring exercise for outcome monitoring, that can also go in here. This is a non-mandatory sheet to fill out. It does not impact the functioning of the template at large. So other pointers to keep in mind is that, of course, we have left comments wherever there are any specific data inputs or explanation required. When you're putting in values from an external source, as might happen when someone is collating it, please use paste values. Similarly, there are some rules that show up on the screen in the form of red cells to indicate to you that there is more required in terms of just making sure that the data is error-free. And on the dashboards themselves, while all of them update automatically when you restart, and some of them do that even without you having to restart, you can always go to the data tab and click on refresh all as you want to see the data come in mid-session. And finally, there are formulas in this which are highlighted in bold. Please do not override the content in any of these. So if there are any questions at this stage, we can take them now before I go to the dashboards. Okay, so then moving on. So this is our top line dashboard, which is again a very overarching, which gives a very overarching view of how the FSM system for the city is performing. So it tells you how many requests have been served, how much sludge has been treated, how much transportation, treatment, and total FSM costs have been incurred on serving each of these requests, and how much revenue has been earned per request so far. Then in terms of the actual operation, you are able to see what are the area types you're serving, who are the service providers that are bringing in more or most of the sludge, how much slum households may have been served. And we know that this is again an increasingly important indicator as we go forward, even within CWIS frameworks. Similarly, on customer types, who is it that is contributing to the demand? And finally, on the payment mode, whether it's point of service, cash, online payment. So just to give an overarching sense of who is it and how are these transactions happening, and who are these transactions happening with. On the performance indicators, we have 4 key ones in the top line sheet. One is the average waiting time. Second is the average number of trips. Third, average tanker utilization rate. And finally, average FSTP utilization. You will see that these are colored differently. And these are colored differently based on the benchmarks that we have provided for these indicators. For instance, if we look at the benchmark for service delivery period, it is 2 days. Or for FSTP utilization, it's 90%. And for truck, it's 80%. How does that show? Our average waiting time is 5 days, which is more than 2 days. So you're instantly able to tell that something needs fixing here. Similarly, on the tanker utilization rate, you'd like it to be 80%, but then 200% means that for the rate that you have set, you are maybe overexerting the vehicles that are available. Similarly, on the average FSTP utilization, so you are, I mean, it's well below the threshold, the upper threshold that has been set. So that's good. So all of this changes and updates as we add in more data, and we'll be able to see that as you open up the sheet and start putting some data in. On the desludging service delivery, what we are looking at is, again, at the very top, how many requests have been served, what is the revenue like, and from the perspective of the person delivering the service, how many of these requests have been completed on time. What we're also looking at here is how much revenue per trip is being contributed by each of the different customer types across area types, right? So for example, herein we see that in general, for the type of data that we have in here, that rural areas contribute a much higher revenue per trip compared to those in like the actual ULB within which the FSM system is situated, right? But we also show here how much of the actual requests do these different customer groups share in, right? For example, even if rural households are bringing in a lot of revenue per trip, they form only 3% of the actual requests. So these are the types of things that, like you can try to understand from something like this. Similarly, on the average number of requests and the level of service achievement, right? So for each month, how many requests are being served on average per day, and the level of service that has been achieved for that particular month on average. And this again too, right? It's important to see these two together, because it might be that even if we are able to meet our benchmarks for the number of requests we want to serve per day, it might lead to a decrease in the level of service achievement. And so that is again something that we can keep a tab on by looking at these together. I won't go into these three because we've already seen them in the first, the top line one. But again, on the scheduled and demand desludging, we did mention that this accounts for both of those models. So in case where there's both happening, how many have been scheduled, how many have been demand based, and what has been the status of these scheduled desludging requests, were they successful or not? Herein, again, on the revenue side, it gives you a breakdown of which type of actor is bringing how much revenue per month, and how that also changes on a monthly level, right? So again, for instance, you might just see that maybe for the months of August and September, the revenues are off the charts, but then the level of service also declines because you're serving much more, you're doing much more. And at that point in time, something like maybe, like doing more requests in a low service requirement period might be more helpful. When it comes to fecal sludge transport, so we have basic indicators on the average number of trips covered per month and the average distance per trip. Again, those two are, in a sense, we could see some relationship there. So that's one on the operational status of vehicles, right? So for all of the vehicles that you have, how many are available or unavailable on an aggregate level. What we're also able to see at the very top is what has been like the downtime vehicle days. So we spoke about this earlier, right? Wherein you want to keep this again at a low of the days that are supposed to be total number of days that you have for the vehicle days. You don't want to have a lot of like breakdown because of which you are experiencing downtime. So this shows you essentially that. Finally, to look at specific, on the operation side, to look at specific vehicles. So for each of the vehicles, we have these listed down here with vehicle license numbers. What has been their average utilization rate? So are there some trucks that have been poorly utilized compared to others? And that could be both a severe underutilization or an overutilization. For each of these trucks, what does the trend in fuel efficiency look like? Is it fairly consistent? Or are there like very rapid fluctuations? And if so, why is that the case? That could be, again, an interesting question to ask, identifying this as the symptom of something that is happening within the larger system. And then finally, what is the average fuel efficiency for each of these vehicles individually, and then overall for the fleet of vehicles. On the financials, we look at a breakdown of the total cost. So how much is non-wage expenses, how much is contributed by wages. Wages is fairly simple. So we've broken down the non-wage expenses instead, and there are different categories again here. So fuel, insurance, vehicle repair, and you can again see how much each of these is contributing and how much does that translate to in the absolute amount. And what is, across all of these different costs, what is the cost of fecal sludge transportation per trip that is being incurred on average on a monthly basis? So again, this will relate to the type of availability or unavailability that you may see with the vehicles. It could be related to how much expenses you are occurring on these non-wage items, right? And finally, on the non-wage expenses, again, since we see it's almost like a variable cost, most of these components, right? So in that sense, for every kilometer that you're traveling, how much non-wage expense is it that you are actually incurring, sorry. Moving on to fecal sludge treatment. At the top level, same as we saw before, total sludge treated, average monthly treatment cost. And like transport side, we have downtime days. So for the treatment plant, how many days has it been has not been operational, barring holiday days, wherein it has been under maintenance or even without it? And which months are you most which are the months wherein these downtime days are concentrated, right? So in the case of the data that we have, it says April, September, and October. And that could again be a starting point to see how the performance has been in these months. Right, but starting with something very basic, we look at the average capacity utilization, and this is an important one. So we have, in this case, the FSTP capacity, let's say 27. So against that, how much are you doing as an average on a monthly basis? But also we recognize that, even if on the monthly level you are doing okay, you are maybe within the 90% of the FSTP capacity, you might still have days where you are exceeding it. So then that information is conveyed to you via these callouts. So for example, in April, you see that while we're doing 10 KLD on average, you still have 2 days where it is out of capacity. And of course, the more of these there are, then we need to then again go deeper to see why is it happening. So what is the sludge contribution from different service providers here? And on the operation side, of course, the treatment aspect is important. So herein we're looking at 3 key ones, which is BOD, TSS, and fecal coliforms. So you can see, overall on how many days were all of these 3 parameters complied with. So all met, whether one or more was unmet, and then all were unmet, right? And if you want to look at it again at the monthly level, we can see this through, at different months, what the compliance is like. So through this heat map, you know that in general, BOD across the year has been not performing that well. TSS is generally doing much better. Compliance with fecal coliform standard is relatively more decent. And again, it's randomly generated data, so we're not going to read into the technical accuracy of how these compliances are related. But just to give you a sense of what to read from this data, right? On which are the problem months. So for example, we see October, it seems, is generally a problem month wherein you have low compliance along all parameters, or April. And we also see then, downtime dates, most of them occurred in April and October. So, those are the types of things that you might be able to instantly pick up from the dashboard and then look into. So there is some standardization when it comes to the financial indicators that we're looking at between transport and treatment. So for each month, how much are you incurring in terms of non-wage expenses, how much for wages, what are the breakdown of non-wage expenses, and what are the breakdowns of wages. So in this case, it's a little bit more complex than the transport side of it, where you have, people fulfilling operational roles, people fulfilling management roles. And again, it harkens back to the idea of what Punita had said about, are you as, is the FSM system, or especially on the treatment side, is it top heavy, where you are spending much more on management than the actual operation when it comes to the personnel deployed? And finally, what is the cost of treatment per liter, and how that varies on a monthly basis? So these are the 4 dashboards that we have. These, again, like I mentioned before, these try to pick out the most key indicators. And as we think about this more, we can, do more customizations, have more nuance as we go in.
Neha,
yeah.
I had a suggestion here that given we are running quite late,
yeah.
we discussed the template in little bit, in more detail after people have had a little chance to play around with it. Of
Sure.
course, the dashboards are automated, so as you just need to fill these logs, and the dashboards will show the results straight off. So I was wondering if it's okay, we should move to the eGov presentation, because Chandar and Gautam are both here. The idea what Malini and Krishna and we were discussing is that it might be useful to also think through, Malini, from your end, or Krishna, how to operationalize some of this. So as I was saying, in Orissa, what we did was we benefited from the one FSTP for which we had all this data, which was under our supervision, so to say, and then extrapolated it and got a few more cities involved, and then took it back to the state government to show them how useful or meaningful this might be for various tiers of government, the cities themselves, as well as the state government for themselves, right? So Neha, if you want to just wrap this up in 2 minutes or so, and then we can request Chandar to come in.
Sure, yeah. So just on the data collection sheets, and you have the files, so you can actually play around with this. We've tried to make it also useful on a daily basis where operations are concerned. And as you put in some data, even if you modify the existing data in these sheets and refresh the data pages, you'll be able to see how all of these get updated automatically. And we can always come back with, like a more deeper dive into the actual data structures at a later stage when everyone has had a chance to look at this. So with that, unless there are any pressing immediate questions on the template so far, we can move on to the next session.
Great. Thanks so much. Guys, if you want to write some questions in the chat, please do so. Maybe after you'll have played a bit with the template, we can come back again, or even do it on a one-to-one basis at convenient times to run you through how to make best use of the template. Neha mentioned the limitations of this template, and much of that is going to get overcome when eGov manages to put together this FSM platform. So I just wanted to introduce Chandar to you and Gautam from eGov. They're here. And Chandar, you are going to make the presentation, right?
That's right, Shubhagato.
Yeah. So essentially the plan is that while we start experimenting with the Excel on the field, this platform is also developed and then is made available nationally for partners to use. Yeah. So over to you, Chandar.
Thanks, Shubhagato. So how much time do I have? Do I still have 15 minutes to cover the tech piece?
Yeah, you have 15, 18, I guess.
All right. Thank you. So I'll try and cover just an overview of the technology part. Thanks for the opportunity, Shubhagato and team. My name is Chandar. I've been with eGov for about 8 months now, and I'm going to take you through an eGov perspective about how technology can be leveraged for solving complex problems like FSM and the sanitation space. Gautam, feel free to add anything while I'm presenting. Gautam is my colleague, and yeah, I don't know how. So what we'll cover is a platform approach, a generic platform approach to solving complex problems, and we'll talk a little bit about what principles are relevant from a platform perspective, from when you're solving FSM specific problems. We'll briefly touch upon architecture, and we will talk about what kind of features and phased out releases make sense from a roadmap perspective. I don't know how many of you know of eGov, but eGov is an NGO founded in 2003 by Nandan Nilekani and Shrikant Adamuni. Sorry, a plane was flying overhead. Nandan and Shrikant also sort of worked on the Aadhaar program and UPI subsequently and so on. So they founded this in 2013, and the mission has been to catalyze urban transformation and enhance ease of living. That's been the primary vision behind which the NGO has been focused on. And the mission has been to embed an open digital infrastructure to improve governance. And the current mission we're on is to get to 2,000 cities by end of this year. Where are we currently? This is a brief snapshot of which states we're engaged in. And some states are green, which means we've completed the implementation. They've been live for many years. Some of them are blue, which means that we are in the process of implementation. A few modules may be live, but we're still driving adoption. So at this point, we've covered about 1750 odd cities across the country. And the endeavor is to get 2,000 by end of the year, and over the next 3 to 4 years, cover the entire country, which is about 4,500 cities. We'll jump straight into what the approach to a platform approach to solving complex problems and building an open digital ecosystem is. So we see this as a 5-step process. The first being the fact that we need to create a shared narrative with the ecosystem players. So eGov realizes that we can't just solve problems from just pure technology. We also need policy frameworks and other sort of people to be involved. So we work very closely with industry, with academia, with civil society and government, and create this shared narrative where everybody has their own part to play. And with that specific view, we've been working with CPR for the last almost 4 months now, specifically on the FSM problem. And CPR has done lots of work in the last 8 years from an infrastructure perspective, and we feel that now is the right time to get into focusing on some of the operational aspects of FSM. The second step in this approach is to build a platform, to use technology to build this core infrastructure and core services, and then use these building blocks, which are based on some core principles, core standards, and digital artifacts. So what Neha was taking you through, some of these Excel templates, these templates can slowly start getting web enabled, and various players in the overall supply chain can start contributing to these. And administrators and policymakers can see these metrics on a web platform rather than use Excel sheets to do that. The third is start scaling out. Right? You've got to pilot in a few lead states. The approach we propose is to take a couple of lead states, and Odisha has been showing a lot of interest, and CPR has been working in Odisha. So Odisha seems to be one of the lead states that we will focus on and prove the concept in that pilot state, if you will, and then scale it out to other states and then nationally. That's sort of the approach to, again, transform and build acceleration across the country. The fourth step is, again, eGov is just one NGO, and there are other players in the ecosystem. And to truly achieve national level scale, we need partners and other people to also start contributing. And the platform approach enables other players, it could be enterprise software players, system integrators, to build their own extensions on top of the platform, and solve custom problems in various states, and then truly make it national from there. And the last step is to institutionalize this platform. To ensure long-term sustainability, it is important that we have a sort of a public institution where this platform is sort of administered and made available at a national level. That's the last step in this whole journey. Coming to FSM specifically, what I want to take you guys through is 6 broad principles that are of extreme relevance when it comes to solving the FSM problems in the sanitation space. The first one is a federated architecture. Now we all know that India is a very complex country with policies varying across states and cities and so on. So we do need a structure, a federated structure of defining states, ULBs under states, districts. Under districts you have ULBs, under ULBs you have wards, and then collectors. So we have this whole structure that needs to be defined, and this allows us to have adequate control and command and control structures and data sharing across cities and states and national level. That's sort of the first sort of principle. Second is the platform needs to be able to scale at a national level. So the architecture needs to scale out to support crores of users and have trillions of transactions. And this is only going to be possible if you have standardization of ontologies and formats and workflows. If you have custom workflows across the city, it's going to be far harder to scale out. If you have to imagine if you have to customize the workflow and the data models in every city, with 4,500 cities in the country, it's going to take us forever to implement and institutionalize. The third principle is a layered design. The architecture, the proposed architecture, which I'll go through, talks about a building block-led approach where we are looking at a layered architecture where we have some core services that will not change too much across the country, and then we have maybe some services layer which can be changed, which can be customized depending on specific need. And then on top of the stack is basically solutions that you can build based on specific needs, and that's where the bulk of the customization will be. It's important to allow for easy integration. There's some background noise. Is there a question, or if not, please go on mute. Thanks. The fourth principle is integration. So we realize that various states may have systems in place, and hence there is a need for us to integrate with those other systems so that the dashboarding is now consistent. People don't need to look at multiple systems to get a common view of what's happening in sanitation and other areas. Some simple examples I've called out here: integration with property registries, integration with building plan approvals. So if you're looking at a building plan approval application, the building plan approval application needs to consider septic tank specifications and location of septic tanks to make sure that the desludging operator is able to access it easily from the street and things like that. And obviously integration with other interfaces that the state or citizens are familiar with, so that they get a unified interface from an access perspective. The next principle is on data. We need to have privacy systems, privacy built into the application. We need to have registries of the most important data sets, and this become building blocks for all kinds of integration and accountability. The last one is an inclusive multi-channel access. So we want people to be able to access the application from a mobile phone app, web browser, and so on. We're also thinking about channels like WhatsApp. WhatsApp is becoming a very important channel. So we're thinking about, can we build a WhatsApp bot that a citizen can use now to log a request for getting his septic tank desludged? So these are multiple channels of access that citizens could consume to get the service from the ULBs. This slide talks about the architecture, and this is the multiple levels of multiple layers of the stack. So at the bottom you have the core infrastructure, and you have things like user registry, organization, property registry, and various ontologies will get defined and stored in the bottom layer. And these would generally not change too much. These are generally, once you've defined and designed it, they don't change too much. And then the next level on top, the blue layer, is the core governance services. These may get enhanced over a period of time. So for example, you have a workflow engine that you will leverage to building your workflows, notifications. You may start off by doing SMS notifications, but tomorrow WhatsApp becomes a channel. Then potentially you'll enhance notifications to use WhatsApp as a channel of communication, and so on. And the top is basically the sanitation specific services. And this will be specific to the FSM platform. There'll be FSM specific services that we will build. So you'll have things like employee registry, a septic tank registry, what the supply chain for a request is in a given state. And we will build that specific workflow where maybe a citizen is making a request, it goes to the ULB accepts the request and assigns it to the desludging operator. And the desludging operator then makes a trip, picks up the fecal sludge from the citizen's septic tank and then takes it to a sewage treatment plant and then disposes it off responsibly. This is like the end-to-end process. That workflow can get modeled in this layer. And then you have various other hooks from there. You can allow the citizen to track their service request to see where is it, what time are they going to come and pick up the sludge, and then typical things like payment and collection and integration with other tools like performance monitoring and so on. And on top of this, you can build a number of solutions. And this is where, if there are existing applications in the state, then the fecal sludge management plugs into that. And then you don't necessarily have to change the interface app for the citizen, and the citizen app can be the same. And you can just provide these incremental functionalities for FSM. And in future, if you want to do this for solid waste management, industrial waste management, public grievance for if your local drain is overflowing, it's blocked, you can log a request from that same citizen app and it gets routed to the right department and they can come and address it. So this is a layered stack approach. And as you can see, it's very easily extendable. So if you want to add more features, you just keep deploying new services in whichever layer as relevant, and then you can scale the infrastructure out. For those who are more technically oriented, this is basically a microservices architecture with all the communication happening through APIs, and there's a Kafka bus that orchestrates all those asynchronous messages across these various services. And that's how and there's a Kubernetes cluster that manages all these services and scales them out as you need more capacity. So how would this get deployed across the country? So we will have a national level platform that gets hosted in some place, and then we will pilot it for one state and progressively deploy it for multiple states potentially as a SaaS model. And then this can integrate with a national FSM system or national FSM data store. If there are initiatives at the center that do happen, then we can sort of integrate with those systems and then carry out the information exchange. And then if there is information exchange required with other applications, the NIUA is talking about systems like data exchange structures like IUDX. We can exchange information with other systems with proper security using the IUDX framework. So this is just a big picture on how this will get deployed and get rolled out. So having a national platform again means that you now have the ability of carrying out specific customizations at a state level. And you could have either the state or system integrators or anybody else can go in and customize it for various states. While the core largely stays intact, the core principles will stay intact. This slide talks a little bit about the roadmap, and the approach we are taking is to phase things out. So you're able to pilot something very small and roll it out to make a difference, and then progressively add functionality and then broaden the rollout as well. The first step we believe is to provide citizens an access to a timely service, and the functionality we are focusing in the first three is basically providing the citizens an access through an app to allow them to log requests. So from a state perspective, the state needs to enroll desludging operators and vehicles and We need to do some policy work around standardizing rate cards across the cities. So once the citizen logs a request, the ULB assigns the request and routes it to a DSO, and the desludging operator provides the service. And then desludging operator takes it to a fecal sludge treatment plant. And the citizen has a feedback loop so that you get to know how good the service was, what can be improved, and stuff like that. This is the absolute basic sort of service orientation that the system will provide in the first phase. The second version brings in a level of efficiency, wherein we are able to now create a marketplace of desludging operators and integrate with property data. We can have registries of septic tanks, and we can sort of now automate. We can once you know where the septic tanks are geographically, you can look at how do I assign a DSO? Is a DSO in that local neighborhood? Are they busy right now? We can look at a variety of parameters and then assign the job requests to those respective desludging operators. We can also do some standards, create some standards and ontologies based on policies. We can build those out as well. And the third version basically adds in a level of vehicle tracking, GPS tracking on the vehicles, and some further analytics on the whole supply chain, and just driving up higher data collection at a system level and allowing the state or the ULB management, ULB leadership to make decisions based on this data. And this is where things like linking with a building plan approval, linking with a property tax collection, and things like that can sort of happen. That's pretty much what I had.
Chander, sorry, just a couple of minutes more, yeah?
I'm done, Shubhagato. I'm done. This is my last slide. So I will be happy to take any questions if anybody has any questions.
Right. Thanks very much, Chander. Yeah, I mean, as Chander mentioned, we are working together for 4 or 5 months through a SWAT team, and the idea is to embed this at least in one state and in the national level, and means much of this eGov has been working to create a national urban innovation stack, and it could be embedded as part of that too. So we are super excited to be working on this together. I mean, the plan would be that we will follow up with each of the TSUs and the national PMU for one-on-one meetings to understand what concerns and critical factors need to be embedded into the program, so that it's scalable and applicable across the country in that layered fashion that Chander mentioned. Yeah. So with that, means I was thinking that maybe given that we are coming to the last 10 minutes, if I could request Neha to kind of run the poll, which kind of has some feedback questions about how we should move forward. Yeah. While we will be in touch with you individually, and I'm very keen to hear when Sandhya, Malini, you guys can think of how we could incrementally move towards operationalization of operational data collection. So it'll be very, very keen to hear from you on those aspects too. We'll be in touch individually. So Neha, if you could share the form online and then we can call on Sakshi for now. So Sakshi, we managed to kind of run through the whole process. I think means another half an hour, 40 minutes would have been more fun. But it's anyway a long session. So and thanks so much for the patience of the whole group of y'all. Means any comments from your side will be very useful. So please do drop us an email. Here's the feedback form. I guess you can see it on your screen. if you could, if I could request you all to kind of just go through it and tell us a bit about not only the session but also on how what we should be considering as next steps. Your guidance will be super useful. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to 2 minutes to kind of enter this form. It scrolls down, I see.
Yeah.
But Sakshi, as came out, as what came out in the initial part of the masterclass was that how to operationalize this in each state has its own strategic issues and challenges, and means it's it may not be the same process in each state, and we have to be opportunistic to kind of be able to embed this. But means I'll also like to add that, given that, means 3 or 4 years back, the FSM construction story itself was seemed so impossible and such a high target, and the kind of performance we've all achieved together. I think on the operational side, if we learn lessons early, start learning and informing each other on lessons early, we'll be in a very good state in a year or two. With that, I'll Neha, can you put the results on screen straight?
Yeah, so we're still waiting for about 15 more participants to fill it in.
Okay. Okay. All right. But maybe Sakshi, if you want to come in here, given we are 5 minutes now to close.
Sure. Thanks, Shubhagato. I think you've covered the next steps, and what I'd just like to add is, as we approach each of the state partners to get the more comprehensive feedback, because I do believe time restrictions did not allow us to get into those details. What I'd request the state partners to also give feedback on would be, Chandra showed the progress of the FSM module and how they're going to develop that in phases. Maybe useful for us to understand at what point should we start engaging with the government. So to get some early buy-in on embedding these dashboards and tools at the state level, and also roll them out at the city level. So that feedback beyond just what goes into the module is important. And that's something we should be mindful of, because that could take some longer gestation period, and we don't have that much time to make it sequential. That's my only add-on. But I'm really hoping that we can demonstrate that. I know we're trying to do that in Orissa, but at the same time scale it up in all the other states which have the appetite to. And Malini, I remember, Malini and Professor Chari, I remember you spoke that, eGov has already laid down that base in AP. So maybe we could think of doing AP first, right after Orissa. But that's for you to decide and come back to us on. Thanks, Shubhagato.
Thank you very much. Neha, how are you doing?
Yeah, so we've heard from 75% of the participants. I'll just share the results on screen. Because we can see mostly everyone thinks that this masterclass helped. And across the board, there's uniformity in all of the different tabs being useful. Thematic dashboards are something that people think is going to be, the participants think is going to be most useful. And again, there is a split between doing a follow-up masterclass and then also one-on-one consultation sessions. We've also had some responses on actually just doing training sessions with the governmental actors and other FSM actors on ground.
Sure.
Yeah.
So thanks so much. So apologies again for not being able to do do a coffee break in between. But thanks so much for today. We look forward to working with you, and we'll be in touch individually. I hope you have all managed to download the Excel. Do have a look, and please feel absolutely free to reach out at any time to discuss it, to help you navigate it, and anything else that you may need on this. And we'll also be reaching out to all of you. Thanks so much. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Sakshi. Thanks, Chandar. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Shubhagato.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Bye for today.
Bye-bye.
Bye.